Poor you, Vanessa said, her eyes dropping deliberately to my bare left hand. Still single at 42. For a second, even the quiet clink of plates at my mother's funeral reception seemed to disappear. My younger sister tightened her arm around Adrian's. My Adrian. Or at least, the man who had once been mine. 10 years earlier, he had been my fiancé. 6 weeks before our wedding, he told me something between us had changed. 2 months later, I discovered exactly what had changed. My sister. Now Vanessa smiled as if she had been waiting an entire decade for this moment. Look at my husband, she said, loud enough for our relatives to hear. Handsome, rich, and happy. Sometimes life really does show you who was meant for whom. Aunt Margaret lowered her eyes. My cousin suddenly became fascinated with his coffee. Adrian shifted beside Vanessa and checked his phone again. 10 years ago, I would have walked out before anyone saw my face break. This time, I looked straight at my sister. Congratulations, Vanessa. Her smile widened. Then I reached into my handbag. But you should meet my husband too. Her expression froze. What? I unlocked my phone. Vanessa laughed. You have a husband? I do. I pressed Daniel's name. And when Adrian heard the man answering on the other end, every trace of color disappeared from his face. I had known Vanessa would look at my hand. That was why I had removed my wedding ring before entering the funeral home that morning. Not because I was ashamed of Daniel. Quite the opposite. That ring belonged to the one part of my life I had protected from my family for almost 3 years. I had spent the morning burying our mother. The last thing I wanted was relatives surrounding me afterward asking when I got married, where the ceremony had been, why they had not been invited, and how I had somehow managed to keep a husband's secret. So I slipped the ring into the small velvet pocket inside my handbag before leaving the car. Daniel understood. You sure? He had asked. Yes. He had kissed my forehead. Then today stays about your mother. That was Daniel. He never needed people to know what he meant to me. Vanessa had always been different. The moment she arrived at the reception beside Adrian, I watched her eyes move from my face to my dress and then immediately to my hands. She noticed the missing ring in seconds, and I saw the satisfaction before she even tried to hide it. Jessica. Adrian spoke first. Adrian. He gave me an awkward nod. Time had changed him more than I expected. At 34, Adrian had possessed the kind of confidence people mistook for certainty. He walked into restaurants like the best table already belonged to him. Now, at 44, that confidence looked rehearsed. There were new lines around his eyes. His smile arrived a fraction too late. And during the first 3 minutes of conversation, he checked his phone twice. Vanessa seemed determined to compensate for him. We almost didn't make it, she said. Things have been insane with Adrian's company. Nobody had asked. Our schedule is ridiculous lately. Between business dinners and travel, I barely remember what city we're in. Adrian glanced at her. We're not traveling that much. She waved him off. You know what I mean. I said nothing. Vanessa had always hated silence when she wanted an audience. She filled it herself. Our anniversary trip should help, though. Adrian's head turned. What anniversary trip? She laughed quickly. The one we talked about. I thought we... Later. Adrian. There it was. Tiny. Easy to miss. But something passed between them. Then Vanessa looked back at me. So, Jessica, what about you? I already knew where she was going. Me? Aunt Margaret shifted beside me. Vanessa's gaze dropped to my bare hand. That was when she said it. Poor you. Still single at 42. And suddenly, I was 32 again. Standing in the kitchen of the apartment Adrian and I had shared, wedding invitations stacked on the counter. Vanessa sitting beside me 2 weeks earlier, helping me choose between ivory and cream envelopes. She had attended my dress fitting. She had taken pictures. She had offered to organize my bridal shower. I trusted her so completely that when Adrian began coming home late, I once called Vanessa and asked whether she thought I was overreacting. She had told me, "Don't panic. He loves you." 6 weeks before the wedding, Adrian sat across from me and rubbed both palms over his face. Something between us changed. I stared at him. What does that mean? I don't know. Is there someone else? He looked me straight in the eyes. No, that lie cost me years. For 2 months afterward, I blamed myself. Maybe I had worked too much. Maybe I had ignored warning signs. Maybe I had somehow become impossible to love. Then one Saturday afternoon, I saw Vanessa getting out of Adrian's car. She kissed him before closing the door. My sister, my fiancé. Vanessa cried when I confronted her. We didn't plan it. Adrian gave me almost the same excuse. We connected unexpectedly, as if betrayal were weather. Months later, I learned their affair had begun before Adrian ended our engagement. Within 18 months, they were married, and somehow, over the years, the story changed. People stopped calling it betrayal. They called it fate. They're married now, Jessica. You can't stay angry forever. Maybe Adrian was simply meant for Vanessa. Eventually, I stopped attending the gatherings. It was easier than standing in rooms where everyone expected me to make other people comfortable with what had been done to me. So when Vanessa stood at our mother's funeral reception 10 years later, with her hand wrapped around Adrian's arm, showing him off like evidence, I understood exactly what she thought she was doing. She thought she was proving that she had won. She looked around the room. You should see our house now, Jessica. Adrian checked his phone. Vanessa. What? I'm just catching her up. She looked back at me. Adrian has done incredibly well. The company keeps growing. We've traveled everywhere. Honestly, life has been good to us. Good. And our anniversary trip is going to be incredible. Again, Adrian stiffened. This time I noticed. Vanessa didn't, or pretended not to. She tilted her head. You know, sometimes I wondered whether you ever moved on. I held her gaze. Congratulations, Vanessa. She smiled. Then I added, but you should meet my husband too. The room went quiet. Vanessa blinked once. Then she laughed. Not politely. Actually laughed. Your husband? Yes. You're married? I reached for my phone. Her smile weakened. Since when? Almost 3 years. Aunt Margaret gasped softly. Vanessa stared at me. Mom knew? Yes. Her face tightened. And she never told me? The people who mattered knew. That landed exactly where it needed to. Vanessa's mouth opened, but nothing came out. I searched my contacts. Daniel had stepped outside about 15 minutes earlier when his phone rang. He had told me it was work and that he would be nearby. I tapped his name. He answered after 2 rings. Hey, everything okay? Yes. Are you still outside? Near the entrance. Could you come back inside? A pause. Of course. There's someone I'd like you to meet. I'm coming. I lowered the phone. Vanessa folded her arms. This is unbelievable. Why? You hid a marriage? I protected one. From me? I looked at her. Especially from you. Adrian had stopped checking his phone. Now he was staring at mine. Something in his face had changed. He stepped closer. Jessica. I looked at him. What? His voice lowered. What did you say your husband's name was? I didn't answer. Vanessa glanced between us. Why do you care? Adrian ignored her. Jessica, what's his name? Behind him, the reception room door opened. A tall man stepped inside, wearing a dark suit. Daniel. He scanned the room until he found me. Then he started walking toward us. Vanessa turned. Her amused expression disappeared first. But Adrian's reaction was different. He went completely still. Not confused. Not surprised. He knew my husband. And judging by the fear that suddenly crossed the face of the man who had betrayed me 10 years earlier, he knew Daniel very well. So why did Adrian Cole look terrified of the husband nobody knew I had? Vanessa grabbed my arm before Daniel reached us. Who is that? Her fingers tightened around my sleeve. I looked down at her hand, then back at her face. Let go of me. She released me immediately, but she stepped closer. Jessica, who is that man? I glanced toward Daniel. He was still walking across the reception room, stopping briefly when one of my mother's cousins spoke to him. Daniel Reeves. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. And I held her gaze. My husband. For the first time since she arrived, Vanessa had no quick response. She looked at Daniel again, then at me, then at my bare hand. No. I almost laughed. No, you expect me to believe you've been married for almost 3 years and nobody knew? Some people knew. Who? Mom. Vanessa's expression changed instantly. Mom knew? Yes. And she kept that from me? She respected the boundary I asked for. Vanessa stared at me as though I had confessed to betraying her. That makes no sense. It doesn't have to make sense to you. Her voice dropped. Show me. I frowned. Show you what? Proof. I stared at her. Vanessa gestured toward Daniel. A picture. A marriage certificate. Your ring. Something. There it was. The part of her that still believed she had the right to inspect my life. 10 years earlier, I had stood outside her apartment begging her to open the door. I had asked how long she had been seeing Adrian. I had asked when it started. I had asked whether she had ever felt guilty sitting beside me while I planned my wedding. She had refused to answer. Now she wanted evidence from me. No, Vanessa blinked. What do you mean, no? I mean, I'm not proving my marriage to you. Her mouth tightened. If this is some stunt because of what I said, it isn't. Then why hide him? I glanced toward Daniel again. He was closer now. Because after what happened with Adrian, every relationship I had became family entertainment. Vanessa folded her arms. That's dramatic. No, it's accurate. I lowered my voice. For years, every gathering became the same thing. Was I dating? Was I over Adrian? Had I found someone better? Was I still bitter? Everyone wanted updates because somehow my life had become the second half of your love story. Vanessa looked away. I continued. I met Daniel 5 years after the engagement ended. That got her attention. We took things slowly. Why? I almost smiled at the question. Because trust didn't come easily anymore. She knew exactly why. Vanessa's eyes shifted. I didn't let her escape the point. Daniel never pushed. He never asked me to pretend what happened didn't matter. He never told me I needed to forgive anyone to prove I had healed. When did you marry him? Almost 3 years ago. Where? A small ceremony. Who was there? People we wanted there. Her jaw tightened again. And Mom? Yes. Vanessa stared toward the far end of the room. For a second, her anger seemed less about me and more about our mother. She really never said anything. She gave me her word. That is unbelievable. No, it's called respecting someone's privacy. Vanessa turned back sharply. Privacy? You mean secrecy? Call it whatever makes you feel better. Her eyes moved toward Daniel again. Then something changed. It was subtle. The anger faded and was replaced by calculation. Daniel Reeves. Yes. She repeated the name more slowly. Reeves, as in Reeves and Calder? I watched her carefully. Yes. Her face tightened. Only for a second. Then she shrugged too quickly. Never heard of them. I nearly smiled. She had recognized the name before I even confirmed it. Of course. Vanessa frowned. What? Nothing. No, say it. You asked whether he was with Reeves and Calder before I said where he worked. Her lips parted. I might have seen the name somewhere. Maybe. She stepped closer. Is that why you did this? Did what? Waited until today. I stared at her. You think I arranged for Mom to die so I could introduce you to my husband? Don't twist my words. Then choose better ones. Vanessa lowered her voice even further. You knew exactly what you were doing when you said, meet my husband too. I felt something in me settle. Not anger. Clarity. You mocked me for being single. She crossed her arms. I made a comment. You compared our lives. You're too sensitive. You called me poor, reminded everyone you married my former fiancé, and held Adrian up like proof that your life turned out better than mine. Her face flushed. And then you pulled out some mystery husband who just happens to be... To be what? She stopped herself. I waited. Vanessa looked toward Daniel again. You wanted to humiliate me. I shook my head. You did that yourself. Her eyes flashed. You've been waiting 10 years for this. No. Yes, you have. Vanessa, you disappeared from the family. You kept your marriage secret. You show up today without a ring and then suddenly reveal him after I say one thing. One thing, you know what I mean. I stepped closer. Here's what you still don't understand. She went quiet. I did not build my life around beating you. Her expression hardened. I stopped competing with you the day you decided my fiancé was a prize. The words hit harder than I expected. Vanessa's face went still. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then footsteps sounded behind her. Adrian appeared in the hallway. He wasn't looking at Vanessa. He wasn't looking at me. His eyes were fixed on Daniel. Daniel had finally reached us. He stopped beside me and rested one hand lightly against my back. Everything okay? Before I could answer, Adrian stepped forward. His entire posture had changed. The man who had spent the afternoon trying to look composed suddenly seemed almost deferential. He extended his hand. Mr. Reeves. Vanessa turned toward him. Adrian gave Daniel a tight, nervous smile. I didn't know you were coming. Daniel looked at Adrian's outstretched hand, then at me, then back at Adrian, but he did not take it. Daniel's hand remained at my back. Adrian slowly lowered his own. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Daniel looked at me. Jessica? There was a question in his voice. Not about Adrian's awkward handshake. About who Adrian was. I had told Daniel the story years ago. He knew my former fiancé had left me for my sister, but I had never shown him photographs. I had never wanted Adrian's face taking up space in our marriage. I glanced at Adrian. This is him. Daniel understood immediately. His expression barely changed, but his hand moved from my back to mine. And Vanessa? He asked. My sister. Daniel gave a small nod. Now he understood everything. What Daniel didn't know was obvious from the way he looked at Adrian. He had known Adrian professionally. He simply had never known that the businessman standing in front of him was the man from my past. Vanessa looked between them. How exactly do you two know each other? Adrian answered too quickly. Business. What kind of business? Vanessa, not now. That was enough to make her suspicious. She straightened her shoulders. Well, since apparently everyone knows everyone except me, maybe we should go back inside. She walked into the reception room before anyone answered. We followed. Several relatives were still watching us, and Vanessa clearly noticed. Her confidence returned almost instantly. She slipped her arm through Adrian's again. For anyone who hasn't met him properly, she said, unnecessarily loudly, this is my husband, Adrian Cole, founder and CEO of Cole Meridian Holdings. Adrian looked uncomfortable. Vanessa, what? I'm introducing you. Then she turned to Daniel. And what exactly do you do, Daniel? Corporate restructuring. Adrian's jaw tightened. Vanessa smiled. Oh. She clearly did not understand the significance, but I noticed Adrian did. Vanessa continued. Adrian's company is expanding too. We've been growing incredibly fast. Adrian looked at her. Let's not talk business here. Why not? It's your mother's funeral reception. She ignored him. We've opened new offices. Adrian's been looking at international opportunities. That's why we travel so much. Daniel said nothing. That silence seemed to bother Vanessa more than any response could have. And our house, she continued, looking at me now. Jessica, you really should see it sometime. We renovated practically everything. Vanessa, Adrian said quietly. She smiled at him. What? Enough. The word was soft, but firm. Her smile flickered. I watched Adrian carefully. Every time Vanessa described how successful his company was, he looked more uncomfortable. Every time she mentioned their lifestyle, he seemed to want the conversation to end. Daniel leaned toward me. We can leave whenever you want. I'm okay. You sure? I nodded. Before either of us could move, Uncle Robert approached. He had been watching Daniel from across the room. Excuse me, he said. Daniel Reeves? Daniel turned. Yes? Robert pointed slightly as recognition spread across his face. Reeves and Calder? Daniel nodded. I thought so. Vanessa looked between them. Robert smiled. Were you the Daniel Reeves involved in that manufacturing turnaround last year? I remember reading about it. Daniel gave a modest nod. I was part of the team. Part of the team? Robert laughed. The article practically had your name in the headline. A few relatives moved closer. Someone asked Daniel another question, then another. Daniel answered politely without turning the funeral reception into a networking event. But I saw Vanessa watching. For 10 years, Adrian had been the man she presented whenever she wanted to establish status. Now attention had shifted without Daniel even asking for it. Vanessa finally interrupted. So, Jessica, I looked at her. You really kept all this secret. All what? She gestured toward Daniel. Your husband, his career, everything. I kept my marriage private. But why hide someone this successful? Daniel looked at me. I could almost hear the question underneath Vanessa's words. Why wouldn't you show him off? My answer came easily. Because I married him. I paused. I didn't acquire him for an audience. The room went quiet. Vanessa's face stiffened. Adrian looked away. Daniel squeezed my hand once. Then Adrian's phone vibrated. He checked the screen and immediately looked toward Daniel. Could I speak with you for a moment? Daniel hesitated. This really isn't the time. I know, just briefly. Adrian moved a few steps away. Daniel followed only far enough to keep the conversation private. Except Adrian's voice rose slightly as his nerves took over. I sent the revised proposal. Daniel answered too quietly for me to hear. Adrian continued. The creditors should have everything now. I was hoping before Monday we could discuss it privately. My attention sharpened. Creditors? Vanessa heard it too. She stepped toward them. What creditors? Adrian turned sharply. Vanessa, what are you talking about? This is not the place. You just said creditors. Later. No. What proposal? Adrian rubbed his forehead. Daniel stepped back. I'm not discussing a client matter here. Vanessa stared at him. Client matter. Something finally clicked for me. Whatever connected Daniel and Adrian was not casual. It was financial. And judging by Adrian's expression, it was serious. Vanessa pointed at Daniel. If this involves my husband's company, I want to know what's happening. Daniel's voice remained calm. That's a conversation you need to have with Adrian. Why? You clearly know. I'm bound by confidentiality. Vanessa turned toward her husband. Adrian, what is he talking about? Adrian looked around. Our relatives had gone silent again. His face tightened. Can we please do this somewhere else? No. Vanessa, you told me the company was expanding. It is complicated. You said everything was fine. Adrian closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, he looked exhausted. Then he glanced at me, at Daniel, and finally at Vanessa. The man you've been insulting, he said quietly, is married to the woman whose husband I've been begging for 3 months to help save my company. Vanessa stared at Adrian as though he had started speaking another language. Save your company? Her voice rose. What are you talking about? Cole Meridian doesn't need saving. Vanessa, lower your voice. No. Several relatives turned toward us. You just told everyone you've been begging Jessica's husband to save your company. I said his firm is involved. That isn't what you said. Adrian's jaw tightened. Stop talking for a minute and let me explain. Vanessa actually recoiled. You're telling me to stop talking? Yes. That single word changed something. Vanessa's confidence finally cracked. I looked at Adrian, and suddenly the details from the afternoon rearranged themselves. His constant phone checking. The way he stiffened when Vanessa mentioned their anniversary trip. His discomfort when she bragged about international expansion. Even his reaction when Daniel walked through the door. None of it had been about me. I touched Daniel's arm. Can I ask you something? Of course. We stepped several feet away. Is Adrian's company failing? Daniel's expression became careful. I can't answer that. I'm your wife, and he's connected to a confidential professional matter. I nodded. Daniel lowered his voice. Anything Adrian needs to tell his wife has to come from Adrian. That answer told me Daniel had known how serious this was professionally, but he wasn't going to use privileged information to help me win a family argument. Across the room, Vanessa was already forcing the truth from Adrian. How bad is it? Not here. How bad? Adrian glanced at the relatives watching. Then he exhaled. We expanded too quickly. Vanessa's face tightened. You said expansion was going well. Some projects did. And the others? They underperformed. What does that mean? It means revenue didn't come in at the level we projected. Vanessa folded her arms. So? So we borrowed heavily to finance the expansion. Her arms slowly dropped. Adrian continued. Debt payments became difficult. We entered restructuring negotiations. Vanessa stared at him. You never told me that. I was trying to resolve it. With him? She pointed toward Daniel. His firm represents the creditor group coordinating the proposed restructuring. The room seemed to shrink around Vanessa. But you said the company was growing. It was. You said we were fine. I said the company wasn't finished, and it isn't. What about the new offices? Some are being reviewed. Her voice dropped. And our anniversary trip? Adrian didn't answer. That silence was enough. Vanessa looked away. Only an hour earlier, she had used that trip as evidence that her life was better than mine. Now she couldn't even get her husband to confirm it existed. Adrian walked toward Daniel. Does this change Monday? Daniel's expression hardened professionally. Yes. Adrian went pale. What does that mean? It means I now know you have a personal connection to my wife that I was unaware of when I began handling this matter. I didn't know Jessica was your wife. I understand that. And you didn't know I was? No. Daniel glanced at me. Jessica told me what happened years ago. She never showed me photographs, and your name never came up in a context that connected the two. Adrian nodded quickly. So, there isn't really a conflict. There is now. Adrian's face tightened. Daniel, I'll disclose the relationship to my firm. What happens after that? I remove myself from direct negotiations. Adrian stared at him. Can't we just keep this professional? That is exactly what I'm doing. The words stopped Adrian cold. Daniel continued. Another senior partner will take over. All communication proceeds formally through the appropriate teams. I understood what Adrian had just lost. For 3 months, he had been building a professional relationship with Daniel. Whatever trust or access he thought he had developed was gone. No private discussion before Monday. No informal conversation. No chance to personally persuade the man he had been trying to impress. Adrian rubbed his forehead. Daniel, I would never expect special treatment. Then the transition shouldn't be a problem. Vanessa suddenly turned toward me. You knew. I frowned. What? You knew all of this? No. Don't lie to me. I found out 5 minutes ago. You expect me to believe your husband has been dealing with Adrian for months and you knew nothing? Yes. That's ridiculous. Daniel started to speak, but I raised my hand slightly. I didn't know. Vanessa laughed bitterly. So this whole performance was a coincidence? What performance? You arriving without your ring, letting me talk, letting me say all those things. You chose to say those things. You wanted me to humiliate myself. No, Vanessa, I wanted to bury our mother. That silenced the room, but only briefly. She stepped toward me. You've hated me for 10 years. I stayed away from you for 10 years. Same thing. No, hate would have required far more attention than I was willing to give you. Her face flushed. You knew Adrian was struggling. You knew your husband had power over him, and you waited until today to stop. The voice wasn't mine. It was Adrian's. Vanessa turned. Adrian stepped between us. Stop blaming Jessica. Vanessa stared at him. She didn't do this. Her mouth opened. Adrian shook his head. No, you wanted the truth? Fine. Vanessa's face changed. Adrian looked at the woman who had spent the afternoon boasting about their perfect life. And there's something else about our life that you need to hear from me. Adrian looked at Vanessa for several seconds before speaking. The anniversary trip is canceled. Vanessa's lips parted. What? I canceled it 3 weeks ago. You told me we were deciding between Italy and Greece. No, you were deciding. I already knew we weren't going. Her face drained. Why? Because we can't justify spending that money right now. Vanessa glanced around the reception room, suddenly aware that the same relatives she had bragged to less than an hour earlier were still standing nearby. What do you mean we can't justify it? Adrian lowered his voice, but there was no hiding the conversation anymore. The problems with Cole Meridian didn't start last month. They've been developing for more than a year. Vanessa shook her head. You would have told me. I should have. That isn't an answer. No, it isn't. Adrian rubbed a hand across his face. We expanded too aggressively. I believed revenue would catch up. It didn't. Some projects underperformed, and we had already borrowed heavily to finance them. Vanessa stared at him. But you said the debt was normal. Some debt was. And the rest? Adrian hesitated. The rest became a problem. Vanessa's eyes filled with disbelief. Our house? I saw Adrian's shoulders drop. What about it? You told me it was secure. The mortgage is significant. How significant? Vanessa, how significant? Enough that we need to change how we live. The words landed harder than anything Daniel or I could have said. Vanessa had spent 10 years using Adrian's wealth as proof that stealing my fiancé had somehow elevated her above me. Now Adrian himself was dismantling that image. The renovations? She asked. Financed partly through borrowing. The cars? One lease ends soon. I'm not renewing it. Her breathing became shallow. What else? Some memberships are being canceled. The trip is gone. I've already reduced several personal expenses. You did all this without telling me? I was embarrassed. Vanessa laughed once, but there was nothing amused about it. You were embarrassed. Yes. Of me? Of failing. The room went quiet. Adrian looked at the floor. I built my identity around that company, and somewhere along the way, our marriage started getting built around it too. Vanessa recoiled. What is that supposed to mean? You know what it means. No, Adrian, say it. He looked directly at her. Every dinner became a chance to tell people what we owned. Every vacation had to prove something. Every time Jessica's name came up, you compared your life to hers. Vanessa glanced at me. That has nothing to do with this. It has everything to do with why I kept pretending things were better than they were. Her expression hardened. Oh, now this is my fault? No. The business decisions are mine. Adrian pointed toward himself. I borrowed the money. I approved the expansion. I made projections that didn't hold. That is on me. Then his voice softened. But I was afraid to come home and tell you the life you loved, showing everyone might have to change. Vanessa went silent. Daniel stood beside me without speaking. Then Vanessa looked at him. And you knew all of this? Daniel answered carefully. I knew information related to the restructuring process. I'm not going to discuss confidential details. How long has Adrian been dealing with you? Approximately 3 months. Vanessa looked at me. Vanessa looked at me. And you really knew nothing? Nothing. Daniel nodded. Jessica and I don't discuss confidential client matters. But Adrian knew you were married. He knew I had a wife, Daniel said. He didn't know who she was. Adrian shook his head. I had no idea, Daniel continued. And I knew Jessica had a sister named Vanessa, and that her former fiancé had married her. Jessica never showed me photographs. She rarely spoke about either of you. That last sentence seemed to sting Vanessa most. She looked at me. So you never talked about us? Not much. For years, Vanessa had apparently imagined herself occupying the center of my emotional life. She hadn't. I had built an entire marriage in which she was barely a subject. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. So this was revenge. No. You expect me to believe this just happened? Yes. You came here knowing you were married to a man more successful than Adrian, and you kept quiet until you mocked me. She stopped. I stepped toward her. You saw my bare hand and decided you knew my life. You called me poor. You called me single. Then you held Adrian up in front of our family like he was a trophy you had won from me. Vanessa looked away. You wanted this moment. No. I shook my head. Revenge would have required building my life around you. Her eyes returned to mine. I did the opposite. Nobody moved. Then I said the one thing I had needed 10 years to understand. You spent 10 years believing I was behind you because I stopped standing beside you. Vanessa's mouth opened, but no answer came. Adrian looked at me. Jessica. I turned. There was something different in his face now. Not fear. Shame. I owe you something too. You don't owe me anything I need. I know. He swallowed. But everyone here deserves to hear the truth. Vanessa immediately stiffened. Adrian. He ignored her. When Jessica and I ended our engagement, Vanessa and I told people our relationship started afterward. Aunt Margaret frowned. Adrian continued. That wasn't true. Vanessa stepped toward him. Don't. It started before. The words dropped into the room. I had known for years, but many of the people standing around us had not. Adrian looked at me. I was seeing Vanessa before I ended the engagement. Vanessa grabbed his arm. Why are you doing this here? Because we've lied about it for 10 years. We didn't lie. Yes, we did. Her hand dropped. Adrian looked toward our relatives. Jessica didn't drive me away. She didn't neglect me. She didn't cause what happened. Then he looked at me again. I cheated on her with her sister, and afterward, we made the timeline sound cleaner because the truth made us look exactly like what we were. Vanessa's face burned red. You don't get to speak for me. Then speak for yourself. She said nothing. Adrian exhaled. I'm sorry, Jessica. I watched him. There had been a time when I had imagined hearing those words. I thought they would repair something. Instead, they simply sounded like an acknowledgement of a debt I had stopped trying to collect. I accept that you finally told the truth, I said. I did not tell him everything was forgiven. It wasn't. Aunt Margaret stepped forward. Jessica. I turned. Her eyes were wet. I told you they were meant to be. I remembered. She had said it at Christmas 9 years earlier, while Vanessa and Adrian sat across the room holding hands. You did. I thought I was helping you move on. You were helping everyone else avoid being uncomfortable. She lowered her head. Yes. Then she looked at me. And I'm sorry. Another relative spoke from behind her. We all took the easier version. I glanced around. He continued. If we'd admitted what actually happened, we would have had to confront Vanessa and Adrian. Instead, we asked Jessica to forgive them so gatherings could go back to normal. Vanessa looked as if she wanted to disappear, but I didn't feel triumphant. Our mother's photograph stood on a table only a few feet away. This was still her funeral. That's enough, I said. Everyone fell quiet. I appreciate the apologies, but I'm not turning Mom's funeral into a trial. I looked at Vanessa. We've said enough for today. Daniel touched my hand. Ready? Yes. We left shortly afterward. In the car, Daniel didn't start the engine immediately. He looked at me. Do you regret telling her? I opened my handbag and found the small velvet pocket. My wedding ring was exactly where I had left it. No. Because of what happened to Vanessa? No. I slid the ring onto my finger. Because for once, I didn't make myself smaller just to stop her from comparing us. Daniel smiled. That sounds healthier. I looked at him. You have paperwork to do because of this, don't you? A considerable amount. I laughed softly. Sorry, not your fault. Then his expression became serious. I'll disclose everything first thing tomorrow. And he did. Daniel formally informed his firm that Adrian Cole had a previously unknown personal connection to his wife. He removed himself from direct negotiations. Another senior partner took over. Adrian received no punishment because of me. He received no favor either. The process continued based on Cole Meridian's finances. Over the following months, the restructuring was approved. The company survived, but survival was expensive. Adrian surrendered a significant portion of his ownership. Several planned expansions were canceled. Assets were sold. His personal wealth dropped substantially. The image Vanessa had spent years displaying, the unstoppable businessman, the limitless money, the perfect lifestyle, was gone. Not because Daniel destroyed it, not because I asked him to, because Adrian's own decisions finally reached their consequences. Vanessa and Adrian's marriage survived the funeral, but it did not survive unchanged. Vanessa discovered how much Adrian had hidden. Adrian finally admitted how exhausted he had become by their constant need to look successful. They started counseling. Eventually, they decided to live separately for a while. For the first time, Vanessa had to figure out whether she wanted Adrian himself or the life she believed marrying him had given her. 3 weeks after the funeral, she called me. I almost didn't answer, but I did. Jessica? Yes. Her voice sounded different. No performance. No audience. I want to ask you something. Okay. There was a pause. Did you know? Know what? That Daniel was more successful than Adrian when you married him? I closed my eyes. Even after everything, she still thought that was the point. No, you didn't? I knew he was kind when nobody was watching. That was enough. Vanessa went silent. Then she said quietly, I think I've spent my whole life comparing myself to you. I know. And you don't compare yourself to me? Not anymore. Another pause. Then I finally told her what I had never managed to explain 10 years earlier. Adrian wasn't the thing I mourned most. She said nothing. You were. Her breathing changed. You were my sister. You sat beside me while I planned a wedding to a man you were secretly seeing. Losing him hurt. Realizing I couldn't trust you hurt more. Jessica, I spent years thinking forgiveness meant pretending that didn't matter. It doesn't. Her voice cracked. I'm sorry. This time I believed she meant it. But believing an apology did not mean erasing the consequences. I appreciate that. Can we start over? No. Silence. Then I softened my voice. We can start from where we are. What does that mean? It means we can be civil. Maybe someday we can build something better. But forgiveness and access are different things, Vanessa. She didn't argue. That mattered. Our relationship became limited after that. We spoke occasionally. There were no dramatic reconciliations, no pretending the past had disappeared. Some relatives came back into my life too, mostly the ones willing to acknowledge what they had done instead of telling me to forget it. Others remained outside my circle, and I was comfortable with that. Months later, Daniel and I sat across from each other at a quiet restaurant for our third wedding anniversary. No relatives, no audience, no expensive spectacle designed to prove we were happy. Just dinner. Daniel raised his glass. Still happy you married the restructuring lawyer? I laughed. Most days. Most? You create a lot of paperwork. He smiled. I looked down at my wedding ring. For almost 3 years, I had protected that ring from becoming another object my family could measure against Vanessa's life. But I didn't feel the need anymore. 10 years earlier, Vanessa had taken the man I thought was my future and spent a decade believing that meant she had won. But I finally understood that the real victory was never finding a better man to display. It was building a life I no longer needed my sister to envy.